Hi guys, and welcome back to the podcast. My name is Robbie Cassidy, and today we're going to discuss sleep. I'm going to go into a bit of detail on the different types of sleep or different stages of sleep. We're also going to discuss the effect of sleep on learning before and after. We'll talk a small bit about memory and the stages of memory. Then we'll discuss the cognitive physiological benefits of sleep before going into talking a small bit about napping and how to actually improve your sleep quality. So firstly, just the main reason I wanted to discuss sleep, and it's something that I've been noticing with a lot of my clients, is at this time of the year when schedules are getting changed around again, people are getting back to school, back to normal work, out of holiday mode. They're coming back into their routine, but it's because it's such a change of routine that they had over the summer months. You can find that sleep can get disturbed. The National Institute of Health came out with a consensus statement in 2013, and it said that 30% of adults are getting inadequate sleep. And then they found that 10% of this population are actually showing symptoms of functional impairments related to sleep deprivation, such as reduced alertness, concentration and focus being affected. Then they found that a lot of these adults actually try to recover sleep, and this is common in college populations and just in the general population as well, in that you're missing your hours of sleep during the week, so you're only getting maybe 5 or 6 hours during the week, and then you're trying to overcome that or get that back by sleeping 9, 10, 11 hours at the weekend. So when the research looked at this and looked at adults in particular who tried to recover during the weekends, they found that the recovery was actually insufficient, and a lot of the cognitive effects of sleep deprivation were still there. So a lot of the processing, you could say, effects of sleep deprivation were still there. So really quickly before we go into it, we're going to discuss just a small bit on the different types of sleep. So there is primarily two types of sleep. You have REM sleep, which is rapid eye movement sleep, and then you have non-REM sleep. And non-REM sleep, both are broken up into different categories, but non-REM sleep is specifically broken up into light, moderate and deep sleep. So REM sleep is actually involved in learning, or it's thought to be associated with learning. Then deep sleep is associated with healing, immune function and growth and development of the body. Sleep deprivation then would be counted, I suppose, as anything that's under 7 hours of sleep. So 7 hours is your recommended guideline. They say 7 to 8. 8 is obviously preferred, but 7 hours is the cutoff point, in that that's where you can get the majority of the benefits of sleep. Sleep deprivation then is associated with increased symptoms of irritability, hostility, anxiety, and then fatigue also. So you'll notice this yourself if you have a bad night's sleep, or if you have a bad quality sleep, that you're woken up a few times during the night. The next day you're going to be a lot more irritable, a lot more annoyed at smaller things that are going on, and you're going to have less patience for different tasks. Another interesting thing associated with sleep deprivation is how it actually affects your pain threshold. Now, pain is something I'm going to talk on a small bit more as we go through these podcasts, because it's something I'm interested in, and I find, especially in my line of work, how it can be affected by so many different factors, and sleep is one of those main factors that really affects your pain and your pain threshold. So they're finding that pain threshold tolerance actually decreases. So if you, on a general basis, if you have a shoulder ache, let's say, or a back ache, if you're sleeping 5-6 hours a night, that pain is going to be amplified, because you have to think that pain doesn't mean, or isn't directly associated to harm or tissue damage, but there's a lot of other factors involved, such as stress, sleep, hydration, exercise, loads of different things. So pain is actually, the easiest way to say it is, but it's, I guess, frowned upon, is pain is more in your mind, in that it's your brain makes up what degree of pain or how severe pain should feel, depending on how much of a threat it's under. So that's why these different things will play in how much pain you're feeling at a certain time. Sleep deprivation then affects attentional control, and I'm sure a lot of you could back this up in that you know yourself, if you have a bad night's sleep, trying to focus on a task or getting the motivation even to work on something is going to be difficult, because of the fact that there's so many things associated with sleep cognitively and physiologically. So your motivation is going to be low to just get stuff done. So then emotional regulation is something, and it's associated really with chronic sleep deprivation, but you will get it after even just one night or a couple of nights, in that you will be a lot more emotional. You get angry faster. You will find that your patience will be thin on a certain level. So before I go into the real nitty gritty of the cognitive benefits of sleep, I want to talk just a small bit about memory and memory type. So memory is primarily separated into declarative memory and a non-declarative memory. Okay, so to break it down a small bit easier, declarative memory is consciously accessible memory, so stuff that you would think about like a fact-based information like where your car is, and then episodic memory as well, so remembering a certain experience, you could say, or a conversation you had with somebody. Non-declarative memory then is more procedural memory, so when you put the two of them together you can see the difference really. And what that means is procedural memory is like habits, actions and skills. A good example of this would be learning to play the guitar as a new skill. It will take a good few repetitions so you can actually condition this memory and consolidate this memory and skill so that you can do it automatically. So the different stages involved in memory would be acquisition and encoding, and that's when you're really picking it up the first time. Okay, so we'll use a guitar as an example. So if the first time you're playing it, when your body is trying to figure out what it's doing, it's learning this new motor skill, it's trying to figure out where to place it in your brain, let's say. Is it in the motor cortex, where it needs to be placed in your cerebellum, which is involved in coordination, and then consolidation. So consolidation is really layering this so that the right neural patterns can be fired when you want them to be fired, so that you'll be able to access this memory and use it. So if you're trying to play a song on the guitar, you initially learn and try to encode where the chords are, and then you are consolidating it by playing the chords over and over again. You don't have to think about which one it goes to. Integration then is an interesting one in that it is how your brain relates this to other experiences that you had before. So for example, somebody who's playing the guitar and who had played the piano previously will be able to pick up music faster because it's not brand new to them. They have an idea of chords and bars, and then they also have an idea of rhythm as well. Recall is exactly as it says in the name, and that's recalling a memory or thinking about past experience. Eraser then is one where the brain is going to delete a memory, for lack of a better example. Well, how does learning actually affect your sleep then? Well, to learn something and for your brain to facilitate that memory or to really encode that memory, it's going to have to change in some way. Now, I've talked about this before and I'll talk about it a lot, and it's really neuroplasticity, and it's your brain's ability to reform and reorganize. In relation to learning and sleep, then they found that learning is going to affect the structure of the sleep. One study did a 6-week course in that they had people do fMRI imaging before and after. Now, an fMRI imaging is just looking at the activity of the brain during a certain task. And when they looked at sleeping before and after and the stages of it, they found that there was a higher proportion of REM sleep over the night. And what they found is that REM sleep then, or what they noted, is that REM sleep is related to knowledge acquisition. So they found basically that if you try learning a language when you go to sleep, your brain is trying to encode that, consolidate that memory. So to do that, it's going to need to be in REM sleep or rapid eye movement sleep to really help make that a memory. What does sleep do after learning? So one study had participants complete a typing task in that they were tapping certain numbers and certain letters in a particular order. And then they checked it 12 hours after wakefulness. So they basically just ran it in the morning, let's say at 8 o'clock, and then they checked them again at 8 o'clock in the evening, and they found that there wasn't a big improvement. But then when they went to sleep, that there was actually a 19 to 21% improvement in that skill the next day. So they found that there was also a performance improvement in those who slept immediately after training. So if you are trying to play a guitar, another easy example, you go to sleep directly after. When you wake up, your brain will have accommodated or facilitated that motor skill in some way so that you'll be better at it, even if it's not noticeable to you. Then in relation to an overnight skill, this is motor skill now in particular, they found that it was actually in the last quarter of the night that most of that memory was consolidated. So within the last, let's say, 6 to 8 hours of the night is really when most of that memory was encoded. So in relation to learning a new motor skill, for example, a lot has to be said for getting the 8 hours in because of the fact that that motor skill is mostly encoded within the last 6 to 8 hours. So the last 2 hours of your sleep, that's when it really is encoded. Obviously, there's bits and pieces that are going to be encoded before that, but the most of it is what I'm saying. The majority of it is really in that last 2 hours, which is interesting. And when they were talking about sleeping immediately after training, it was actually they had a 60 to 90 minute nap, and they found that it really enhanced the motor skill also. That might not be the best option in terms of improving your overall quality of sleep at nighttime. It will improve your reactiveness during the day, but when it comes to nighttime sleep and getting your 8 hours, if you're sleeping an hour and a half in the middle of the day, you're going to find it harder to get to sleep at night. So basically, when you go to sleep, if you're trying to learn a new skill, or you are trying to remember something, like learn something for college, let's say, or for work, what's basically happening is your brain is automating that memory. So it's first encoding it and consolidating it, and then it's automating it, so it doesn't take you as much work to try to recall that memory. It makes it more automatic. Another study looked at sleep before learning then, and the effect that sleep deprivation actually had on you trying to learn a task afterwards. And they found that basically memory retention was affected. So it was harder to pick up or learn new things the night after the day after, I should say, a bad sleep. And then really interesting thing that they came out with from this study was they found that between coding, let's say, negative and positive stimuli, so positive experiences and that you were happier about, and experiences that were threatening or that you were less pleased about, they found that positive experiences weren't coded as well as negative experiences were. And then the study actually went on to say that it could provide an explanation for why in depression, or there's a higher incidence, I should say, of depression in sleep-deprived individuals. Basically, it was saying that they may have a negative remembering bias. So even if something was positive or negative, because of the fact that they slept poorly the night before, that the negative was reinforced. So basically the easiest way to say it is that because they were sleep deprived the night before, they're really only remembering the negative. And that ties back into what we were saying about pain and how pain is increased after a poor night of sleep. Aside from the cognitive effects, which would be the effects that sleep has on your brain, how about the physiological effects and what it has in your body? And it is involved in muscle recovery, and they're finding that there's higher injury incidence or higher injury rates in people or athletes who are sleeping under 7 hours a night as well, and especially if you're sleeping under 6 hours a night. And it could be a lot to do with motor control. There's a few different speculations. Is it motor control? Is it processing, that they can't figure out what to do in time, and that their bodies isn't reacting in time, because there is obviously reaction time is reduced in sleep deprived populations. And then on top of that, they're finding that your endurance is reduced, and then that you are more susceptible to sickness because your immune control is also affected. So there's a lot of effects in terms of sleep deprivation, but it's really negative. So it sounds really negative, I say. So I don't really want to be pushing that all the time. And if you look at it from the opposite side of the spectrum, the positive effects of it, if you are getting over 7 to 8 hours of sleep per night, you can really, really harness all the benefits of that. So you can improve your endurance, you can learn things a lot faster, you can recover faster, and you're not as fatigued during the day. You'll be obviously in a better mood because you'll be able to code positive experiences a lot more. So there is a lot to be said for sleeping 7 to 8 hours, and not just to be saying all the negatives about it. In terms of actually improving sleep quality, there's a good few things you could do, and a few simple things that you can actually just implement today to try get better sleep tonight. And then it is a snowball effect, or you can have a snowball effect. One bad night's sleep is going to affect a lot of your decisions the next day, same as one good night's sleep give you a lot of motivation to keep going. Easily the first thing that I'll talk about is sleep hygiene. Sleep hygiene is just a certain set of behaviours that you do before you go to bed and during the day, and that can affect your night's sleep and affect the quality of your night's sleep. Simple things such as just keeping a consistent sleep and wake cycle. So you're like going to bed at 10 o'clock every night and getting up at 6 o'clock every morning. All the way throughout the week, it's going to set you on the right path, in that your body knows when it's time to go to sleep. Your body loves routines. We're creatures of habit, I suppose, is an old saying, but it loves routines and it loves habits. And the reason is that once it can make something automatic, it uses a lot less brain space and uses a lot less energy to carry out that task. Keeping a consistent wake cycle and keeping a consistent sleep cycle, your body will know when to increase melatonin, which is a hormone associated with sleep. It will know when to start relaxing, and it'll know when to get up in the morning. You'll find a lot of the time people that wake up at 6 o'clock every morning, when it comes to the weekend, they will still get up maybe 7 o'clock, 8 o'clock, but they won't be able to sleep in for too long a lot of the time. And that's as a result of circadian rhythm. You'll also see it's very apparent with jet lag. So if you go to a different country, your circadian rhythm is off. It doesn't know when it's light, it doesn't know when it's dark, it doesn't know when it's time to sleep. So even though you're in bed, you might sleep for 3 or 4 hours, you'll wake up because your body associates that more with a nap than actually sleeping a full night's sleep, because of the fact that the time zone is different. That's the first one I want to discuss. And then the second one then is actually dimming the lights around your house 2 hours before you go to bed. And this ties in directly with that melatonin release and with circadian rhythm. Because of the fact that you can leave the lights on around your house, your body doesn't know when to differentiate between day and night, or it doesn't know how to differentiate between day and night, because it's getting the same light signal all the time. It's getting bright light. And this comes into not using or avoiding screens 2 hours before bed as well. If it doesn't know when it's nighttime, it doesn't know when it's time to go to sleep. So dimming the lights around your house will actually help your body adapt to that change in light, or change in what it would feel or think is sunlight, and it will start preparing you to go to bed. So you'll start preparing to go to bed a lot earlier. A simple one then would be just avoid eating 2 hours before you go to bed, because if you eat a lot, or if you eat a good amount or a big amount in it, and I've been prone to this myself, and if I'm working out late and coming back, I have to try get some bit of dinner in so I can be recovering. Then I'll eat a good load at 9 o'clock. By the time it comes time to bed at say 10:30, I'll be wide awake because I'll be full, all the digestive processes are working, and that my body, it doesn't feel like it's time to sleep. Another really simple one that you can implement today would be caffeine use. A lot of people forget that one of the main effects of caffeine is to keep you alert and awake. And this includes, and it's something that I would say about a lot of my clients, because a lot of them fall into this habit of having just a cup of tea after dinner. So if you're having a cup of tea after dinner, although your body might get used to it, it's going to affect the structure of your sleep. So you'll be in more of a light sleep mode than a REM sleep or a deep sleep, which are the two ones you want to get into. On top of that, and that's if you're lucky enough to go to sleep. A lot of people fall into the cycle of come 9:30, 10 o'clock when they should start getting ready for bed, because they only had a cup of tea at 7 o'clock after dinner. They won't feel tired because the caffeine is still in your system. Caffeine has a half-life of 12 hours, so it's half of it has gone out of your body after 12 hours. So what I would recommend to people is, really you shouldn't be drinking it 12 hours before bed, but that's obviously difficult, and I'd be a hypocrite if I said to do that. But what I find works for me, and it's worked for a lot of my clients, is to stop drinking it 6 hours before bed. Time your teas and coffees in that. Have one at 9, have one at 1, and then that's it for the day. It gives your body enough time to adapt, it gives you enough time to wind down. But I would say to avoid as much as possible having coffee after 3 or 4 o'clock in the day. So that's a really simple one that you could do. Now, if you do enjoy a cup of tea or just like a warm drink at night, you can also go for a decaffeinated version of the drink. So that's something to keep in mind. Or you could change that to a chamomile tea, which is associated with better sleep, or helps people get to sleep. So they're just simple ones to start implementing today to really make a difference in your sleep. The last two then will be making sure that your bedroom is a restful area. And this is one that a lot of people get caught with, in that they jump into bed, they pull out their phone and laptop, and they start flicking on stuff while they're in bed. So that's going to affect your sleep efficiency. And sleep efficiency is basically the amount of time you spend in bed as opposed to the amount of time that you're asleep. And you want to get them as close together as possible. You want to spend, when you get into bed, basically, you want to be going to sleep as quick as you can. Okay, so if you're on your phone in bed, or if you're watching TV or Netflix in bed, then you'll find that once you turn it off and you try to go to sleep, your body hasn't changed. Basically, it's been in the same state, in that it was alert watching the show. Now you turn it off and all you're doing is lying down. There's no clear differentiation between when it's time to go to sleep and when it's time to be alert, because there should be that couple of processes in front of it or behind, like just before you get into bed, that should be helping you to wind down. So if you're dimming the lights already, say brushing your teeth, that means that when you do that task, it's time to go to bed, and your body will know that. That brings me on to the very last one in sleep hygiene that I wanted to talk about today, and that is maintaining a regular actual bedtime routine. And this is one that I push with every one of my clients, in that we always discuss what are the main things that you do before you go to bed. What habits do you always do, no matter what, before you go to bed? So a lot of them are as simple as brushing your teeth, feeding the dog, getting changed, obviously, and then jumping into bed. So what we try to do is attach different habits onto these to improve that, and then we try to nail down the routine so you do the same 3 to 4 tasks every night. And a simple one that we attach to this would be a breathing routine. Maybe something as simple as box breathing, 5, 5, 5 and 5. So 5 seconds inhale, 5 seconds exhale. Or sorry, I should say 5 seconds inhale, 5 second hold, 5 second exhale, and 5 second hold. And do that for 5 to 10 minutes before bed, just to help your body relax down. And I'm going to talk about breathing a small bit more as we go through these podcasts and these episodes. But for now, that's an excellent one that works for a lot of people. It's you into that relaxed state. If you have a bedtime routine, make yourself conscious of it. If you brush your teeth, if you feed the dog and get changed, some people like to journal for a couple of minutes. But as I said, we're trying to keep that sleep efficiency as good as possible. So if you're journaling, let's not make it a 45-minute job. Try get it done in like your 10 to 15 minute. But if you are going to be journaling for a long time, let's try take it away from the bed if you can. A handy one then would be setting your phone on charge across the room and having your alarms set before you even get into bed, so it's consistent. What that does is it stops you from jumping into bed, taking out your phone saying, I'll check this one more time. Or what happens to a lot of people, and I know the feeling myself, is that you take out your phone and say, did I set the alarm? You go into the alarm, you have a notification from Instagram, or you have a notification from, say, Facebook or TikTok or some other social media, or emails are coming in, and you say, I'll just check this one, and straight away that brings your alertness from a 2 to a 3 up to a 7 to an 8. Now you're back alert and you're awake again. Putting it on charge across the room, although it works well with sleep efficiency in that it helps you spend or stay asleep when you're in bed, it also really helps you keep away from your phone and get caught in those simple but addictive habits, in that you just don't even realize, and then you've spent 15 minutes on your phone, and then you're finding it hard to go to bed, or finding it hard to go to sleep, I should say. One that I use all the time myself then, that I find very helpful, is a sunlit alarm clock. Now there's a good few different companies that make this. Philips make it, and there's another one, the one that I'm using itself is sunlit. But basically what it does is it brightens for 1 hour before you wake up, so it nearly mimics the sunrise outside. So I set my alarm for 7 o'clock, and then the alarm on the clock will actually go off at 7 o'clock, but it'll start getting brighter from in and around about 6:15 to 6:30, and it'll just keep getting brighter right beside my bed, and then I'll wake up in and around about 10 to 7. When you wake up gradually, you find that you're not in that daze, that you are groggy or you're kind of foggy, and so I find this alarm clock is excellent because I don't get that feeling that, oh, I'm missing work, or I'm jump up, it like as a shock factor when your alarm goes off out of nowhere. So I find it excellent for that, in that it does give me a bit of time to get myself ready. I notice it getting brighter and brighter and brighter, and then it does actually have an alarm on it, a very light alarm at the very end of it. So the alarm will go off at 7 o'clock, but usually you're up just before it. Another handy one that I find is sleep tape. So I actually got this sleep tape sent out to me from a company called Conscious Breathing. And at the start I was kind of a bit skeptical of it. I thought that I slept with my mouth closed all the time. I thought that I was I was a nasal breather. But I found that after using the sleep tape for a couple of days, that massive improvement in my sleep and a massive improvement in my alertness in the morning. At the start though, when I did start using it, the very first night, I put it on, went to bed, and then I woke up in the middle of the night, basically with, I suppose you could describe them as nightmares, thinking that there was something in the room and there was something in the bed. But really, it had just to do with the fact that I had that tape on my mouth. I wasn't used to it, and I just went straight into it, didn't think about it. Now, I didn't take it off that night. When I woke up, I kind of reminded myself I was alright, jumped back into bed, left it on, and woke up the next morning. Not too bad. Like, I wouldn't say I was in any way more tired than I would usually be. But the next night when I popped it on, then I found a huge difference. Didn't get any of those same trouble, but I did find it very useful in that when I woke up in the morning, I was wide awake. I didn't have a dry mouth. My nose was clear, and I was ready to go, basically. So the sleep tape, you can get it anywhere. The one I got is from Conscious Breathing. I can tag it in the show notes if anyone is interested. But yeah, it's definitely something that I found very useful. It is basically just nearly like a non-stick tape, or very light stick, in that there's not a lot of glue on it. So you could use a band-aid, I suppose. It's just as simple if you wanted it, because it's not forcibly closing your jaw. It's just running from the top of your lip down to the bottom of your chin. So it's basically just stopping your mouth from falling open. Because if you find that your mouth is falling open, if you find that you're snoring, it's going to disrupt your sleep in that if your mouth is open, your jaw falls to the back of your throat. And if it's at the back of your throat, then it's very hard to inhale properly. So you'll find people will be snoring, basically, or they'll be gagging for air, or they'll wake up a couple of times during the night to try catch their breath again. Very similar to sleep apnea. So what the sleep tape does is it basically closes your mouth and keeps your jaw forward so that you have a clear airway and that you can sleep away without any issues. So I definitely find that one very helpful. Now, napping is another one that I wanted to touch on before I finished up today, because it's something that a lot of people probably think they should do, but not a lot of people incorporate it into their day. So there's a good few different studies on it. Napping itself can be very useful because of the fact that it'll increase your alertness and your reaction time, and then it will reduce fatigue, in that it's like a second wind, you could describe it easily as. Now, the idea is that you shouldn't nap over 30 minutes, because then you can actually fall into that REM sleep and deep sleep, and you're not looking to get into those stages of sleep when you're napping. You're just using it as a refresher. So time-wise, I'd be looking, from what I had heard previously, and I must look it up to back this up, but it was NASA had recommended a 26-minute nap, and that was inclusive of a 7 minutes to fall asleep. So if anyone wants to go by that, it's actually one I use myself. I find it very handy. It's only like, by the time you're asleep, you're awake, so you don't actually wake up too tired. Another one that you can add then on top of that, if anyone is interested, is a thing called a caffeine nap. Now, when I was in college, it was something I experimented with a lot more, and now even if I'm working early in the morning, if I'm up at, let's say, 4:30, 4:45 in the morning, and I find I'm tired in the middle of the day, I'll try getting a caffeine nap, in that I will drink a cup of coffee at 1 o'clock and I'll go to bed at 1:05, and then when you wake up, when the caffeine kicks in, you'll wake up about 20 minutes later or 25 minutes later, and you don't get that groggy feeling at all. So it's another simple trick. It'll work for some people, it might not work for another. I've got caught so many times as well that I've drank a cup of coffee and I've just lied down and been wide awake. I've went on my phone or something for a second before going to the nap, and then I've been wide awake for the whole 25 minutes. But there is research backing the fact that if you do just lie down after lunch, that it will also get similar effects to what a nap does. So you'll actually also get that increase in time. So really it's just resting and digesting, I suppose, the easiest way to say it. So that's kind of all the main stuff that I wanted to talk about today. Now, if anyone has any questions, guys, please don't hesitate to either get onto me on Instagram or send me an email. That'd be the quickest way to get to me. But the main takeaways that I want you to take from today is that sleep before learning something like a motor skill or a language is necessary for the initial encoding of it. So if you don't have enough sleep before you try practice, so if you're, let's say, training the next day and you don't have enough sleep, you're going to lose out on a lot of your training if you don't have your 7 hours sleep, you're going to lose out on a lot of your training because of the fact that your memory isn't going to be encoded properly. So the brain isn't going to adapt appropriately or as efficiently or as effectively as it could if you did sleep properly. So that's one simple thing. Set yourself up right by getting a good night's sleep before. The next thing then is sleep after learning is actually going to be required for the consolidation of different forms of memory. So do you remember we talked earlier about declarative memory and procedural memory? Sleep after is going to be good for that, both of them in procedural and declarative, but procedural more so that if you're trying to learn a motor skill, as I was saying, such as a guitar, sleep after is when you really will get the neuroplastic changes in that your brain will adapt and reorganize, so you will be able to, or you'll be better at that skill the next day. Then the third one was that catch-up sleep at the weekends is not as effective as they initially thought because of the fact that it affects your cardiac rhythm and that your sleep schedule is all over the place. There is still functional impairments after a weekend of catch-up sleep. So the best thing is to try keep that same sleep schedule or as best you can for the whole week. Then sleep hygiene really quickly is just your 2 hours before bed. You want to avoid screens and food or eating heavy. A lot of water as well, because if you're drinking a lot of water late in the day, you'll find you'll get up in the middle of the night, which is going to disturb your sleep. On top of that, you can dim your lights 2 hours before bed to help you help your body prepare for bed, and then keeping a regular bedtime routine, so you're doing the same 3 or 4 tasks every time before you go to bed. Keep them all the same. Last one is on that sleep hygiene is the caffeine as well. So avoid caffeine or that cup of tea late in the day. If you want to go for that, then look for a decaffeinated option instead, or a different type of tea that would be more conducive to sleep, so like a chamomile tea. Now, I'm not an expert in teas either, so I'm sure there's other ones, and I'm sure there's people out there saying, oh, there's this one works, that one works. If you have any ones that work better, definitely send them in to me, and I'll put them out in the next one, or I'll put them up on my Instagram. But that's kind of the main things that I wanted to touch on today. So I hope that you took something from it, guys. If anyone has any questions, as I said, pop them on to me. I'll be on Instagram at the Mobility Tutor, and my email is mobilitytutor@gmail.com. Forget the day. So just mobilitytutor@gmail.com. And then you can also check out my website at themobilitytutor.com. So that's all for this week, guys. Thanks a million for signing in. I will chat to you all soon, and we'll go at the same time again next week. Lastly, guys, if you took anything from this, I would love if you could leave a comment or subscribe on iTunes and Spotify. And if you could please leave a rating as well, because it really helped me, as it's just a new show. So thanks a million. I'll chat to you all next week. Have a good one.